The whole country has been talking about the budget for 2023-24. So also is the disability sector, but with a lot of disappointment. There are a couple of things which we had thought would be looked up in this budget. The first thing is the reduction of 90 crores from the previous budget of 240 crores. So this year the budget is 150 crores. Already there is 196 crore unutilization. And what was this money for? This was for the implementation of our greatest rights-based law, Rights of Persons with Disability Act. And one of the greatest focus of this law was accessibility. Accessibility to schools, to colleges, to parks, to universities, to cinema halls, to theatres, to institutions. Unfortunately now, this accessibility part cannot be covered with a hugely reduced budget. The second component of accessibility, where we are already suffering a lot, is public transport. We need buses which are low floor for easy climb, but with reduced budget, a reduction in allocation, I do not think this will be looked into. The second component is the health coverage. We had requested, especially after the severe pandemic of COVID, that there be a free and universal coverage of health care for the disabled. This has not been looked into. And we also know, all of us, whether disabled or non-disabled, the mental health cases have risen exponentially 10 times, 100 times there has been an increase. But there has been no substantial allocation for mental health programs. Thalassemia. Thalassemia patients require a reimbursement. They require a substantial reduction which stands at 40,000, whereas it should be 2 lakhs, because we cannot allow people with thalassemia to die because they could not provide the rest 1,60,000 for their treatment. The third component which we are looking at are the National Trust and the Rehabilitation Council of India. Now these are two important pillars for the well-being of the disabled. The National Trust looks at 4 severe categories: cerebral palsy, autism, intellectual disability and multiple disability. But their allocation, it stands stagnant from the previous year. Rehabilitation Council of India is another important component, because everything that we do, all kind of professionals, whether they are the physiotherapists, the speech therapists, the special educators, their qualifications, their training, their education is all governed and guided and monitored by this council. Now again here the allocation stands stagnant as compared to the previous years. Fourth, which is again very important, is the pension. The pension amount stands at 300 rupees again and covers only 3.8% of the population. The demand of the sector was, let the amount be increased to a more dignified 1500 to 2000 rupees and let the scope be increased, because 3.2% of huge population is a very, very microscopic coverage. Our suggestion to the government is, when we have a person with disability in the family, then costs increase, because there is a medical cost to it, there is an assistive device cost to it, and that member requires regular medical therapy, requires treatment, requires medication in some cases. So that person is also not able to contribute regularly and consistently to the family income. One member of the family becomes a carer. So please try to understand, how will that person go out and work? In such a situation, the person with disability may be provided substantial support and deduction. And at the same time, the Prime Minister had given a call that all archaic laws of the land, they must be removed. But in the Income Tax Act, the ATU payers, that must be looked at very carefully, because we have to find out how many people with disability are taxpayers, and accordingly a lot of decisions can be taken, because the Income Tax Act, it still refers to the old law, which is Person with Disability Acts 1995, and so it looks at 7 categories of disability, and that needs to be looked at, changed very carefully. And accessibility is something without which people with disability cannot do anything. Education, employment, recreation, everything is dependent upon accessibility. Hence, the RPWD Act budget must be increased substantially and exponentially to about 9,000 crores, which may also include the elderly, as they also have many disabling issues. Assistive devices are life-saving for us. Without this wheelchair on which I am sitting, now I have been always getting my wheelchair from the US. It is a quickie breezy, it is very light, it can be picked up by even the frailest of my caregivers, and it is not manufactured in bunch or in masses. It is made customized, made according to my body length, from the hip to the knees, from the knee to the heel, from the heel to the toe. So, I can sit on this wheelchair for 18 hours, 19 hours without much feeling any discomfort. But this wheelchair, to import it, I have to pay a huge tax. So, what we generally do is, family members coming from outside, they adjust it with their luggage and they bring it. But can every person do that? So, these type of import taxes on vehicles that are used by people with disabilities, that taxation should be removed completely. Number 2, assistive devices of very high quality are now available in India, because the IITs, our IITs have become hubs where students and startups are working to create a lot of scooties, wheelchairs at a very, very low rate, and those institutions, those startups must be given huge discount, huge relief in terms of taxes. The third thing is, private colleges, private schools, they now abound in India. So, there must be some component of mandate where students with disability get some extra support for their disability, get some extra privileges for their disability, and for this some budget allocation should be done to the private institutions. Number 4, all the recreation centers, all the temples, they must be churches, mosques, they must be provide fund from the cultural grant, so that we have easy and comfortable access with dignity. That is something which we really need a lot. That's very important. Scholarships. Students need scholarship for higher education. Unfortunately, the amount that is given presently is very small. They have to take personal loans, they have to take loans from family, from friends. So, that support must be divided, because we must understand they will need assistive devices, they may need a caregiver, they may need some extra medication, they may need an extra taxi or a car to travel when they are outside, they may need some nutrition supplements. So, the scholarship amount has to be really big and large. Workplace accommodations. Lot of companies which are employing people with disabilities must be given some tax concession for creating accommodations for people with disability. In number of countries now, tax relief is given to a company which has 25% of its employee force or labor force with people with disability. In India, we must start practicing that, because then there will be a motivation to employ more and more number of people with disability in the workforce. Land can be given in subsidized rate to them, taxes can be reduced, electricity tariff can be reduced. So, if these things are taken care of, I think people with disabilities will lead a life of dignity, because we have one of the best rights-based law now, but a law cannot achieve on its own. We need an environment for the law to function, and one of the strongest pillars for the law to function is budget. Hence, budgetary allocation must be increased. Yes, another aspect is research. Research grants must be given in huge amounts for further research in disability.